This episode of Heroes of the Horn is brought to you by Aaron Bell, Dan Scott, and Justin Ekus. Occasionally motion flickered in the dark street, someone appearing and vanishing after a few steps, or even floating across the ground as if flying. Many people's dreams could not touch Tel'aran'rhiaod.
Welcome to Heroes of the Horn, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Sir Matt.
And I am Sir Ezra. Welcome to our Wheel of Time book club. The horn has sounded and we have answered the call. Today we are covering The Lord of Chaos, Part 3, Chapters 7 through 9.
Yeah, as you know, you and I were talking about the pace at which we want to go through this book. And I think we decided we're going to do more parts, sort of less chapters, because in books past, I felt like, sometimes it's like, man, in some ways you end up skipping over a bunch if you're doing like 5 to 7 hour blocks of chapters,
right?
But at least then, like, the stakes weren't necessarily as high, in some of those like earlier books. The earlier chapters is just a lot of traveling and like stuff like that. But now it's like, man, there's too much going on. So we're probably gonna be doing more more episodes, smaller blocks of chapters. So it just kind of depends too, because just the way these books go. Sometimes it's, we were looking ahead in this book. It's like, well, here's a block where the chapters are all like 20 to 17 minutes. And then it's preceded by like 3 chapters that are an hour and a half each. It's like, okay, well, like, where do you go?
I know. And it's one of the things, going back to the beginning of the podcast, we were sort of like, okay, yeah, when we looked at the first book, well, look at this. We can knock out like 5 chapters and do this or do whatever. And also, like, you guys, as you guys know this, Matt, it's the Matt and Ez network, baby. So we've got all sorts of other kind of projects and stuff that are going on, and like that can also kind of affect our ability to, like, just with reading schedule and stuff. So we got like Kenobi, and we got all sorts of stuff happening too. And I mean, that same thing happened for, like, we didn't do as much hyperspace when we had Heroes of the Horn roaring there through season 1. So it's like, it's cool to be kind of have the summer starting here and be able to get back into it and really, like, look ahead at the chapter. So at the end of this, we've already kind of mapped out the next couple chapters, and then Matt went ahead and looked and said, okay, about 3 hour blocks, and let's kind of keep it in terms of listening to the audiobook. That's kind of the way he and I do it. Like I said, if we did chapters, man, some of them, it's like, yeah, you could get like 5, 6 chapters because they're 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then sometimes you get to some that it's like they're an hour and a half.
Right.
It's like, what the heck? So it's just all over the place. But I feel good about this batch that we've got here today. Some exciting chapters and stuff like that. You actually had a really cool, I want to mention this for anybody who is you guys listen to podcasts, and we're podcast consumers as well. I wonder how many people listen to us at a faster pace. Or, you know what I mean? In their app or whatever. I did not know this was necessarily, I don't do it, but I know a lot of people, when they're at work and consuming podcast, will listen to stuff a little faster. And Matt just mentioned he listens to the audiobook just a crank higher, because the narrators, they have long pauses or spots where things get kind of slow, if you will. So it's nice to kind of get through that. So
yeah, I did. I just started listening to it I set it about 1.25, and I found it to be much. I don't know. It's not that the regular read is bad, but it's just like these narrators specifically, if you're listening to the audiobook, they tend to really kind of draw out words, especially Michael Kramer, they're his husband and wife, right?
Right.
It's like, he really like tends to kind of like exaggerate.
Oh, yeah.
And extenuate all these like characters that are saying things. So
right. And it's already a long freaking read.
And there's like really long dramatic pauses and stuff. So I started listening at like 1 1/4 speed. And I'm like, wow, this is actually, I'm liking it more. I actually didn't think I would. I don't think I could go much faster. Some people listen at like 2 or like 1.5. I'm like, I can't do it.
No, wait. No, I think just a slight uptick. I think Lottie does like 1.5, and I've heard that. I'm like, oh, okay, it's fast, but it's like doable. I think I'm with you, and like somewhere between 1 and 1.5 would be kind of solid. I don't do it enough actually. And actually it's so weird that you mentioned it beforehand, because I was just thinking to myself,
Yeah.
like, okay, it's summertime. How can Ez start cranking out more reading? So I was like, so many things I want to get caught up in terms of like Star Wars books, Wheel of Time. I want to read ahead for Elder Wand. We got so many things I want to. Well, really, House of the Dragon. I want to go back and read Fire and Blood, and
Yeah.
that's dry for me. So sometimes, just like it is for you, I
Right.
think. And so it's like nice to turn the speed up
The
on
heat
that.
up. Yeah, of all of the things we do listen to, and so I think it could just be these narrators. Like I'm assuming eventually maybe Rosamund Pike is going to end up narrating the whole series, re-narrating the whole
Mhm.
series. I haven't listened to the version of Eye of the World that she has done,
Right.
and not that I dislike these. I actually really like the audiobooks for this. It is just one of those things where you really need to dedicate some time, because I feel like some of these that are an hour could actually be like 40 minutes. Like if
Mhm.
they just read a little bit faster, but it's whatever. We're nitpicking here. And of course,
Right.
there people are saying, Matt, you could just read the books and maybe you could read as fast as you want. But if I actually
That's
read the books, I just don't, I can't do like, I don't know. Reading is not something that I do well with. I do way better with audio.
Yeah, I do know that though. That is something, and I in the summertime I always do try to pick up, and this is good. We're in a book club, so we're going to talk about books for a second. I do pick up a book, and I try to do one of those binge reads where it's like back when I read the Harry Potter books, for example. Once, like overnight read it. You know what I mean? I am
Right.
embarrassed to say this, but I well, not embarrassed to say it. I'll say it. The Twilight books in college, I was working at ECR Computers in a call center, had nothing to do, and I was like, okay, so I can't really listen to it. Got to listen for the phone to ring. And yeah, man, you can sort of read at your own pace there and skip through stuff that's a little bit boring or whatever. But the nature of our job sometimes, like that's why people listen to podcasts, YouTube things, radio shows, audiobooks, because like, you got to do stuff. You got to be working on
Right.
something. You can have something in your ears and kind of do it that way. So, but yeah, we get maybe I'll pick up a book, an actual book, and open it. I mean, I have one in front of me right now, Lord of Chaos, but it's like I listen to it
You
first,
have
and then
you have all the books, don't you?
I have them all. Yeah, I actually do go through, and I want to look through, like, because I'll hear it sometimes and be like, hold on a second, who is that character? And actually, I've read it before, and I need to see it spelled, or I'll go to the wiki real quick and I'll kind of look up like who that was and see how it's actually spelled
How
out.
it's spelled.
Because visually, I like some of them, like I almost said her name, but there's a character who's coming up in a book or two who is very famous and sticks around for the whole series. And it's like, okay, I only know that I hear the character, but the way I read her name at first was very different from
Well,
the way they
totally different.
pronounce it. Yeah. So it's one of those weird kind of things. But anyway, hey, before we dive into all the chapters and stuff, I wanted to read real quickly, if this is cool, just
Yeah.
pigeon at the top of the show here, because we got one, and I thought this was really cool. So this is from Nick Bright, who wrote in. This was literally like a couple hours before we started the podcast, and I haven't checked beyond that. It was the most recent thing. I just wanted to pop in there and see what we had. He says, "Hey guys, a few weeks ago I was listening. Actually, hold on. Let me read the title of this. The title of this message is, or this email is, a message from an age long past. A
Let's go.
message from an age yet to come." I was like, oh my gosh. Hi guys. A few weeks ago, I was listening to one of the episodes covering the Great Hunt, where you were discussing the then upcoming Amazon Prime show and all the new fans that would be exposed to the books in your podcast as a result. Wait a minute, I thought, that's me. I watched the show while recovering from COVID in January, and as often as I do, I decided to read the source material to gain a greater appreciation and understanding of the world in which it's set. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. I started Eye of the World in mid-January and just finished A Memory of Light about a week ago. So to say this series had consumed me would be an understatement. That's insane, man. I want you to think about that's like doing nothing else except for like just I mean, you're just reading constantly. Like you're working, you're doing something, and then you're reading the series. So that's really big accomplishment. Your show has been an incredible compliment to the books and a great way to revisit earlier parts of the series with knowledge of what is to come. It's also been fun to use it as a time capsule for the early days of COVID and to sow further confusion about the pronunciation of names and places. Yeah. Thanks for all you do. Keep up the great work. Perhaps I'll hear a mention of this email in an episode from an age yet to come, but the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. Like this guy, Nick
Let's
got
go.
way into it, man. I love it. That's kind of stuff I'm talking about. It is sort of funny, we were just talking about one of the reasons why when we did the reread is, or I'm sorry, this fresh read for Matt, new reread for me, is like we cover the news, but sometimes we almost want to bracket it and set it aside because really what is timeless is like a story we tell or just something that's going on in our lives or whatever. And then, the chapter, our experience and our discussion on the chapter. And it is kind of funny, I guess, if you can kind of, I think I've heard some people just skip through it, right? When they go back and they find our old Bend the Knee
Right.
episodes or our old, episodes
Right.
like, all right, yeah, we know the show's out. I've already seen the show. Let me skip past all this, right? So it's kind of funny. It's an interesting way to kind of, have people experience the podcast. But yeah, cool. Thank you, Nick, so much. Appreciate that. And that's awesome. That's awesome. Again, guys, there are other ones, and I'll try to pull those up later. But thanks for sending those in, and always feel free, send us a pigeon at thehornofalear@gmail.com.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Okay, well, let's dive into the chapters
yep.
today here. So, chapter 7, a matter of thought. So, we start off and we're in Elaine's point of view. So, Elaine and Nynaeve are sitting in their room in Saudar, preparing to go to Tel'aran'rhiaod. Elaine is telling Nynaeve that they must get there before the Aes Sedai leaders, whom they are teaching about the world of dreams. They each take one of the Tel'aran'rhiod rings that Elaine has made. Elaine is studying her ring, trying to figure out why the ones that she has made do not work as well as the original. When Nynaeve asks if she's going to sit there all night, they each take a drink of the herbal drink that Nynaeve has prepared to help them sleep and then lie down. They speak shortly of Egwene, who they know was harmed in Cairhien on the day that Moraine and Lanfear died, before Nynaeve falls asleep. As Elaine drifts off, she thinks about the Hall of Towers in Saidar, and of how, or Salidar, excuse me, and of how they have been so slow to make decisions. When Elaine arrives in Tel'aran'rhiod, Nynaeve, Siuan, and Leanne are all waiting for her. Finally, Shiram, Carolyn, Morven, Myrelle, and Anaya, and Beowen, excuse me, appear. Much thinking occurs on Elaine's part, mostly about Tel'aran'rhiod, the Aes Sedai, the Wise Ones, and Egwene. The first place they go in Tel'aran'rhiod is to Elaine's study in the White Tower. When Leanne disappears to go check if her eyes and ears have received her messages, Myrelle tells Nynaeve to go with her. Once Nynaeve has left, Elaida appears dreaming. As I have foretold, the White Tower will be reunited under me. Under me. She leaves, and Anaya points out the blue strips that have been removed from Elaida's stole. Morven, Carolina, and Anaya make their way to the keeper's work table. Then Shiriam, Beowen, and Morella go to search Eliada's desk. They read many reports, among them reports on the arrest warrant for Moraine, the fighting taking place in Shinar, and of the Blight still being quiet. There are strange occurrences in Cairhien and Ilion. Elaine is to be returned to the White Tower as soon as possible, and Elaida has sent emissaries to meet with Rand. Beowen tells them that it seems that Elaida means to support Rand and that she is offering him an escort to the tower. Their conversation is cut short when they hear a scream and shouts from the other room. They all rush in to find out what has happened and step into a nightmare. They find themselves in stone cavern that's filled with Trollocs. Carolina is bound and hanging by her ankles from a chain and is being lowered headfirst into a bubbling kettle of boiling oil. Anaya and Morven are standing, excuse me, at the border of the nightmare, and they are transported into it. Morven finds herself being stretched tightly on a great iron wheel, and Anaya is being dangled by her wrist while Trollocs flog her with metal-tipped whips. Shiriam announces to the other Aes Sedai that they must link, but Elaine tells them that they must not accept this nightmare as being real. However, the Aes Sedai do not listen, link, and try to attack with fire. The weave vanishes at the edge of the nightmare, and then the three Aes Sedai are drawn in. Shiriam's head is sticking up from a dark metal bell shape, and the Trollocs are jerking levers on the outside. Elaine asks Siuan if she remembers what she and Nynaeve had told them before the dispelling nightmares, and Siuan nods, replying that they must deny that they are reality. Elaine and Swan try to picture the hallway as it has been, but nothing changes. And they realize that they need help. They don't know where Leanne and Nynaeve are, so their only hope is the Aes Sedai. They both step into the nightmare. Elaine finds herself lying on her belly on rough gray stone, with her wrists and ankle tied to the small of her back. Swan starts screaming to Shiriam, telling her to believe that it is a dream, and Elaine takes up the refrain. Finally, suddenly, they are back in the hallway. Swan is a mass of bruises. Carolina's hair has been burned down to a hand from her scalp. Shiriam and Anaya seem to be weeping heaps of bloody rags. Morella is naked and covered in welts. Morven is moving unnaturally, and Beowyn's dress has been clawed to shreds. All of the Aes Sedai want to go back to Saladar, but Suwan says that she will stay. Elaine wishes to stay with Suwan, but the Aes Sedai tell her not to be foolish and return with them. When the Aes Sedai disappear, Elaine knows that she has a few moments before anyone will check on her, so she transports herself to the Grand Hall in Caemlyn Palace, where what she finds dismays her terribly. The Lion Throne is sitting on some kind of pedestal, while a throne made of golden dragons sits on the dais. She wonders what Rand thinks he is doing. She finally steps out of Tel'aran'rhiaod. So yeah, this actually was a big chapter,
Yeah.
and there's a lot to take. There's a lot to take away from this. First of all, man, going to sleep inside Tel'aran'rhiaod is a really bad idea, I guess. Can you dream inside the dream world?
Yeah, man, like this is a nightmare that they kind of stumbled into, that they get, trapped in. And it's something they've been warned about. They've been warned by the wise ones about entering Tel'aran'rhiod and what the consequences can be, and that you're not ready for it. And actually
Right.
what's interesting is that, like, Elaine is more prepared for it than any of her kind of elders or her seniors or mentors or whatever. So it's through her kind of coaching them that they're able to get out of this thing. And actually, what's wild is we don't know it yet. I guess I can talk about it now just a little bit, but like there's consequences for this. There are actual physical consequences. They talk about the cost of entering Tel'aran'rhiod and what it can be. So like, let me you care if I'm gonna go on a tangent here for just a second about this. Is that
Yeah,
all right?
well, just one thing I want to say real quick before you go on your tangent
Yeah.
is because it'll tie into to whatever you're going to say.
Yeah.
Um, I have noticed, again, this is my first read of the series. Every book, what takes place in the dream world gets bigger and bigger and more consequential and more
Yep.
consequential. I mean, it does seem like every time we go into it, they keep saying, "Oh, don't, like, things are bad. You don't want to do bad stuff in there." And it's like, okay, well, it seems to be getting worse and worse and more dangerous as we progress.
Yeah, 100%. And just to kind of go over again, some of the consequences and what can happen, and just some of the nature of Tel'aran'rhiod. The last known dreamer I'm sorry, our current dreamer in the White Tower is Egwene. So they call her a natural dreamer. She can dream walk. You have the wise ones. They often are going in there frequently, and they seem to be well versed in it. They're dreaming, dream walking, and all that good stuff, communicating with other clan chiefs and stuff. Many of the Forsaken understand it very well. This was actually something that during the Age of Legends was well known, and more well known, and more well studied. They had Tirang Grial that could help him get there. Actually, Elaine has made, that's something interesting, right? She has made Tirang Grial that she's passing around to other individuals. That's a talent that has sort of come back, and they're able to all get there because they have, like, these rings, this access, right, to get in. So that's pretty cool. I just want to go over again here, like, anyone entering the world of dreams while sleeping, or they can enter it. So like, while you're there, you could encounter someone else sort of coming and going, drifting in very briefly in their sleep. They only brush up against it in their sleep and often do not know what they are doing. These people usually do not stay for more than a few seconds. Many people awake with pains and bruises, but they can't really explain why. Now that's interesting, right? When you think about Robert Jordan writing this, and have you ever woke up with sort of like, oh, that's a weird, kink in my back or
Right.
neck or whatever. And what is that from? Is it from the dream? Was I tossing and turning too much? Or was it actually something that you went into this other world and you do have a bruise, or you woke up with a bruise on your leg and you don't understand where that came from, and whatever. So that's kind of an interesting, I think, tie in there. But yeah, dreamwalkers can enter the world at will while sleeping, as well as those who can hold a certain Tarmon. Some dream Tarmon do not even require channeling to activate them. So, like a lot of them, that's an interesting thing, right? A Tarmon doesn't need to be channeled. The one power doesn't have to be channeled into it. Now, there are some that you do need to kind of channel to gain access or whatever, but yeah, there's just there's different ones, and as Matt's finding out too, we're making more of these bad boys. Like the more of these special artifacts and items are kind of cropping up. Actually, I've always thought in Wheel of Time, there's so many artifacts and little things that are like have power or could be used in a certain way and give you an advantage, and it makes things more complicated, more whatever. So that's pretty cool. But let's see. Yeah, another way to access the world of dreams is to create a yeah. Yeah, we saw this. See, I always make sure that we've seen this before. Is to sort of create a gateway into the waking world. It actually happened when Rand went in and was chasing Ravine. So, like, remember they
Right.
entered it in the flesh, sort of. Yeah. So, just wanted to kind of bring that up. Also, we know Perrin has special powers there as well, and Wolf Brothers and so on have a lot of access to it. But Anaya, who is in here right now sustaining these injuries, actually says later, and we'll get some of this at some point, but like, yeah, that she will confide in people that yeah, her bottom hurt a little bit longer than she wanted to admit, right? Because it was a real physical injury that she went too far, and you can get
Right.
hurt in this world. So that'll be interesting in the show to see, right? That'll be interesting for them. I mean, these women are like, this is a terrible dream sequence. They believe they are dying. And to, I think, a fan who hasn't read the series and doesn't understand the dream world, to see this on screen, you'd be freaking out. Like, oh my God, they're killing these Aes Sedai. These Trollocs are in this world, like shredding them. Like, I mean, they're putting them in pots of boiling whatever. Like, this is nuts. So just a crazy
I mean,
nightmare that they go through. Yeah.
this when you do a search of Tel'aran'rhiaod on Google, there's not a lot of it yet.
Right.
It wasn't confirmed in the show whether they were in Tel'aran'rhiaod technically or not when Moraine
Right.
and Suan meet up there. Now,
Right.
technically, if they did, they didn't, they said that could be like something else, but if they did, then they would have slept in Tel'aran'rhiaod
Yeah, that was interesting.
because first they slept together. Well, there wasn't much sleeping
Absolutely.
going on, and then they
Right.
actually slept there.
Right, right. Yeah, so I don't it's a reflection of the waking world, but it's not necessary. So they're asleep and they still enter that. Their bodies are in different rooms. What was interesting about the show is it looked like she walked her physical form
Right,
walked into either they did that because they didn't yet know how to do it or what they were going to make Tel'aran'rhiod, or it's something that is a little spoiler for later on in the series that's a special thing that they can create. And that's what people were kind of speculating. And I think, Matt, you've already heard the term, which is like a people, because when this came up in the show, and unfortunately, this is just a nature of it. Like if you're watching season one and they drop something that happens in book 6 or 7, well, what are you going to do? I mean, like that's,
right,
that happens. So that was like a dream shard. That's unconfirmed. That's like not, I don't think that's confirmed anywhere. What people were speculating, is it Tel'aran'rhiod? Is it a dream shard? Is it some, did they enter in the flesh? You know what I mean?
right,
Which is dangerous. So is it their own thing? I don't really know yet exactly what, because yeah, it looks all kind of ethereal and mystic and
right.
everything, right? So
Yeah, we're
yeah.
not entirely sure what it was ultimately that they.
Read that last sentence above this
I know. I know. This is the part where if you're watching the episode with the beloved lesbian, you listen to them scream and awake.
It's awesome.
Unfortunately, Wheel of Time just did not have a lot of like the Screen Rant and all. A lot of those like junk websites that just cover a bunch of. There weren't as many articles
Right.
about it. So
Yeah,
so
it'll probably turn up in season 2 more. People are like,
I
well, what
think
was
it
this?
will.
Yeah.
I think it'll pick up because a lot of people don't even watch shows that don't have like
Mhm.
multiple seasons because it's like, well, I don't want
Yeah, let's
like
just see how that
any
goes, right? Yeah.
every time a new Marvel show drops, I wait. I'm just like, I'll wait until all 6 episodes are out, then I'll just stream the whole thing.
Right. Yep, exactly.
Um so okay, so the second part um of this episode. Hold on, by the way,
Yeah.
Morven,
Sure.
so we have Ordeeth,
Yeah,
Mordeeth, now we got more Van. I mean, I'm just saying,
I know,
can they be trusted?
yeah, they just did, yeah. I know they're starting to sound a little too similar, right? Like, what's going
Right.
on?
We're getting into Lord of the Rings territory here. Eowyn,
Oh,
Aragorn, Arwen. It's like,
dude, let me tell you right now, because again, we're in so many different fandoms, and I read a lot of different stuff, and so do you. It is Lord of the Rings territory where you're like, I've even messed up sometimes, and a lot of times in Lord of the Rings, where I'm like, the names are too similar. They're so
right.
similar that I'm like, what the heck? Or they're so difficult to say, and everyone has different pronunciations, which is funny because Nick brought that up in his message to us. It's like, yeah, to go back and figure out, all right, how do you say this? I jacked up Tel'aran'rhiaod at the beginning of the show
You
because
did.
I was like, I don't know how do you say it again.
Well, I do know on the Reddit, some of the Wheel of Time Reddits, they blast the authors of the audiobook because they do go back and forth on
Oh yeah.
Mogadine and Mogideon. And that's like a total different pronunciation.
Well, they
And then
also
we definitely have people who message us and they're like, you guys need to learn how to fucking say those words.
hey, you know the thing too. So Brigida and Brigitte,
Right.
they say that both
They
ways
say
too.
both.
That's why I actually like to kind of feather it in both ways from time to time
And we've
because
said it before that
to appease.
the show has totally changed the way they say some of these things.
Right, right.
What
It's
was it?
awesome.
What was the one they said that we were like, I've never heard it once pronounced like that way? Was it
Mm,
Camelin? Or was like Caimlin or something? It was some
yeah,
Gildon. Or it was like
yeah.
Gaeldon or something.
Yeah,
The
it
way
was
they said
something
it in the show.
different.
Gaeldon. And we're like, what the hell is Gaeldon? Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
like Gilladon is how what's his name says it.
Says it. Yeah,
Michael Kramer in the audiobook, he's like Gildon, it's
yeah.
like
It really gets. Yeah,
he
you're right.
really gets it.
Yeah.
Then they called
I
it Gaeldon in the show. We're like, what the heck is that? Like,
Right. I think he had to do that because he himself is the reader. Because you're right, he does that all the time. He has to really like, ooh, I gotta like squeeze an extra
yeah.
like emphasis on this
You
syllable to make
you
it,
can't you can tell which characters like he's really into Rand. Like you can tell he's like
Oh my god.
really into into
He's
reading into reading Rand.
right. He's channeling some
Yeah. And
crazy.
real quick, just before we move on to the second part of this chapter, and we are
Yeah.
talking about the audiobooks. One of the interesting things about the audiobooks of this, and I should go listen to the Rosamund Pike version of Eye of the World,
Yeah.
is because you have male and female. Sometimes you go back and sometimes you'll have like a conversation where it's like typically she reads female points of views. Well, she does, and he reads male point of views.
Right.
But you have two different people. So you still have situations where like Elaine is talking to Rand or whatever. And so like there is like something noticeable of like when she's covering like Rand,
It's true.
because
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like it's not like Game of Thrones where you like sometimes you need to treat the narrator as unreliable.
Hmm.
Like this book series I shouldn't never really feels like the point of views like anybody's an unreliable narrator.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so so like it's not like like when Rand speaks, it's not like I should assume it feels like even we're watching it from somebody like a third person,
Yeah, it does.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of in theory like a first person, like you are reading through their eyes.
Hmm.
Is still the way the book is sort of written. So I don't ever it is just interesting to see the way that they portray these characters because they each portray the same characters.
Right, because mid chapter you can have Egwene's point of view, right, where that's being read by Kate, and then you have to then all of a sudden there's a long break and a pause, and Rand takes right over, so we get his thoughts on that same conversation. Now you also, as the author, and this is what Robert Jordan does sometimes, is you don't give us that
Right.
person's thoughts, and you can kind of hold that or whatever. But yeah, you most of the time, yeah, when you hear it, it's like, oh, that's really what Rand thinks. That's really what those characters are kind of experiencing, and you take it um for what it is. Now, it is always interesting. I love too that when it's like when it's Nynaeve talking about Elaine, they're always kind of this extra. It feels so real because there's this extra banter about like personal digs. They're making like a
Right.
personal dig about how much Tom, or Elaine was
Right.
sitting on Tom's back, you know.
There's one, I think it's actually in chapter 8, which we can get to here shortly. But it's where Elaine is talking about Rand, right?
Yeah.
And she's thinking about Rand. She's like, well, I wonder what what he's doing. And she's thinking about like, well, does Rand need anything? And Egwene says like he needs what he's always needed, like a
Yeah.
slap on the head. It's like, geez,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
I know. I know.
anytime he gets up to no good, it's like the same thing that boys always need. It's like, okay,
Right.
here we
All the time. All the time. It's nonstop. Yeah. So okay, a couple more things, just let me think here. The big thing was, right, that they wanted the arrest warrant, what was out there, right, for Moraine. They want Egwene back, they want Elaine back. And so they're in a light of stuff, seeing her letters. That's a kind of a cool thing, is that there is some I don't know which one, what would you call this? What's the word for it? But like as they're looking through the box of letters and stuff, it will disappear on them. Some items are stronger and hold in the world than if they've been there longer, or if they're temporary and they're changing. Like, yeah, it is sort of still a reflection, but it could be changed just to. So you got to be careful with what you read, I guess is what I'm saying. You can learn
Right.
some stuff, but then some stuff vanishes so quickly. Well, that might have just been a thought that might be a crumpled up paper that's not even really there anymore. But it was cool that they got to look in the box and sort of see what was going on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay. So the last part of this chapter is pretty short. Demandred steps out from behind the column in the grand hall of the Canelan Palace, had been watching Elaine. He can tell that she does not like what Rand had done in Canelan. Let the Lord
right.
of Chaos rule, he says, and then he leaves. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
doing my best, Michael Kramer there.
That was good, actually. That was good. Yeah, because it's this it's a moment where it is always we're always told that there are individuals watching them in Tel'aran'rhiod, and that the Forsaken rule this world. They should be very careful there. Um,
Yes.
and to see one step out and like who could have struck Elaine or something, even though he doesn't, but like what could he have done there? Could he? Because Nynaeve gets into it with Mo Gideon at
Right.
one point, and that's a big deal. We have Silverbows, freaking, that's a whole other thing. The Heroes of the Horn
Right.
and Brigida Silverbow is now again with our crew because of all the events that took place in Tel'aran'rhiod. So that was kind of a scary moment, but also it's an interesting moment that Elaine is upset about what Rand is doing, and this is this constant like, I don't even know. It's something about the whole series that kind of gets me. It gets a little much sometimes because like, okay, like we get like because Rand is doing this for her, right? But she's like, how dare
Right.
he? And also, I don't need him to do
I
this for me.
know.
And it's
I
just
know.
so extreme
It
on both
does.
sides that you're just sort of like a little bit is funny and it's comic, but at some point I'm like, geez, cow, okay. And then they get there and then it's just this swooning over each other. And oh my God, I'm so in love with him. And it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
you do. But also he's gonna listen to me, it's just crazy.
Yeah. I will say this. We are also reading this straight through as opposed to people who read it like when it came out. Because I was sort of thinking about that. I
Right.
was like, man, sometimes this does feel like a lot. But at the same time, like, well, we're also, I guess, in a way, sort of binging this.
True. Yeah.
Rather than reading it over, the 20 years or whatever that it took it to actually ever, come out. So I have calmed down a little bit with because people have messaged me and said, Matt, why do you just keep hating Nynaeve? And so I'm in an effort of fairness
Right.
towards Nynaeve,
I
right?
know you're gonna love her. I know it.
Nynaeve, right?
Nynaeve.
Some
Oh.
people don't even like that we call it Nynaeve. It's not, it's, but that's how they say it in the show. So deal with it.
It is.
So
Yeah.
it's
Deal with it. Yeah.
Nynaeve, Neave, right?
Right.
So nonetheless, in an effort to be more fair towards that character. So
Right.
okay, well, let's switch to chapter 8 here, which is The Storm Gathers. So Nynaeve awakens as she and Elaine ready themselves for the day. Elaine tells her about what happened in Tel'aran'rhiod after Nynaeve and Leanne leave. Nynaeve begins to grumble about how the Aes Sedai think they know everything, and then mentions to Elaine that she thinks she saw Rand in Tel'aran'rhiod, and Elaine, says she moans the fact that she isn't with him. After they finish dressing and Elaine leaves, Nynaeve wanders off to find who it is, Moghedien. To me, it's
Moghedien
Moghedien.
is
I actually don't
Moghedien.
know how they get Moghedien. right?
I
Because
know,
there's
right? I
only
know.
one D. So Mogadine. She finds the Forsaken washing clothes with some other woman. The woman in charge tells Nynaeve that Morel had told her that Marigan could help her with the washing. So Nynaeve takes off. As she walks, she sees Morella, but luckily for Nynaeve, the Aes Sedai does not notice her. Eventually, she finds Logain, who is surrounded by people. He is telling them the story of how the Red Aja set him up as a false dragon. Leyline and her warder, Burin Ed Shireen,
Yeah.
are keeping a watch over him. When he finishes his tale, Leyline assures him that Logain no longer wants glory and that their lands are in no danger from him. When she notices Nynaeve hastily curtsies and then hurries off. Next, Nynaeve comes upon Suan, who is facing off Garth Bryn. They are fighting over the fact that he tried to pay her a compliment and how she nearly snapped his head for it. After Garth Bryn leaves, Nynaeve informs Suan that she meant to study her stilling since Nynaeve had only 2 chances so far to study her. Leanne shows up. I tried to talk them out of it, only they had not listened to you enough to consider it. You won't be meeting the wise ones tonight. She and Suan walk off. Lelaine, is it
Yeah.
Lelaine?
Lelaine.
Right.
Lelaine.
Okay, sorry, I was pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah.
Who was standing between them remarked that Suan and Leanne should be sent off to Tiana, the mistress of novices, for always seeming to fight with each other. Leyline then asked Nynaeve what she thinks Rand will do. Nynaeve tells Leyline that she has not seen Rand in half a year, and she knows nothing of what he is doing. She goes on to mention Egwene, Mat, and Perrin, and then tries to talk Nynaeve out of trying to heal Suan and Leanne, but she refuses. When Nynaeve leaves, she passes Uno. This is a funny scene, right? Who is training heavy cavalry for the Salidar army. He smiles at her and she moves on. She eventually runs into Elaine's novice class as she watches Theoden approach her. They speak of Nynaeve's block, and he informs Nynaeve that they will work on breaking her block the next day. That was like the most interesting thing from this chapter.
Yeah.
Nynaeve goes back to her room to lie down when Mogadine bursts in the room, angry that her hands are wrinkly from doing laundry. Nynaeve tells Mogadine that she wants to go over the lesson of learning to deflect a man channeling again. After quite a while of practicing, Elaine enters the room with news that an emissary from the White Tower has arrived. So, yeah, this
Yeah.
chapter definitely had a little bit of well-placed comedy in it, with sort of with the Elaine and Rand and Nynaeve conversation, like, oh, he needs what he's always needed, good slap on the
Right.
forehead. Like that
Yeah.
was in there, and then like the summary just sort of says they walked by Uno, but I'm pretty sure the text it said something about him being a little more crass and like cursing with
Oh yeah.
like he's like teaching the class, which was pretty funny. And then like even the stuff with Mogadine, it's like here you've got Mogadine doing laundry. I mean,
I know.
it's like ridiculous.
I know. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, Morrigan, yeah, thinking she's washing clothes and doing stuff, and then wants to use her. So this whole, I mean, thing is it. The interesting part about this section of the story is that okay, Nynaeve and Elaine have gone off and done these great things. They've come back and they've got precious artifacts. They understand more about the Black Aja, sit on a special mission, all that good stuff. So they come into Salidar, and they now, through having Mogadine, they like have all these different powers and talents and stuff, right? They're learning stuff and they're passing stuff on and they're teaching stuff to other people. So that's interesting. But yet at the same time, they're doing all these chores and they're running around doing all these different things and stuff. It's kind of crazy. Though the interesting part about this too is Logain, right, who's surrounded by people and he's telling his story of how the Red Aja set him up as a false dragon. Now that's a big deal because there are no Reds in Salidar unless of this emissary who's showing up at the end, right? There's somebody showing up from the White Tower. And Logain is basically saying that the Red Aja set him up to take him
Yeah.
down, right? Like that this is all an inside job, and it makes them sort of look bad. They're telling lords and people, anybody who will listen. So Nynaeve and others kind of walk across that and get that vibe. That is going to be something to pay attention, because what is he supposed to do right now, right? I mean, he is
Right.
gentled, and so he needs a kind of a purpose to keep going. And there's this promise of revenge against the Red Aja. Is
And not that I want to shift conversation way outside of where we're at right now, but do you think that's going to be season 2 of Wheel of Time? This conversation right here, because if you look at what they're doing with Logain in the show,
way sped up,
like
right?
I think this is book 6, but I feel
I
like that
know.
could be season 2 of the show.
I know, right? They've taken
Because
his
they
whole
built
arc.
him up like he's a huge part of season 1.
Right, so you go all this time where he doesn't really have a lot happening or whatever, and once he's in Salidar, I mean, literally
Tons of stuff
everything
starts
for
happening. Yeah.
the whole thing. So it's like they might not do it in Salidar, right? They might not push the whole White Tower divide that far, but you could start with this. Maybe he doesn't do it. Who knows who he starts telling this to, right? He's talking to the Blues. Maybe actually he's a part of the fracture in the
Right.
White Tower, right? If he starts, saying he wants some sort of revenge and whatever. Although the way they kind of do it, it's like it's no longer in the show, right? It's no longer just the Reds. It's
Right.
actually now everybody who was there.
Right.
And that's going to be another thing, which I didn't even think about at the time of the show, but really what keeps him
Right.
going and not committing suicide or not whatever, just giving up the will to live, is that he wants revenge, and he that's the only thing he can think of right now. There's
Yeah.
more for him for sure, but it's like, yeah,
That'll be that should be our extended for today. Logain's
yeah,
role in season 2.
right,
Because when I was reading this, I was like, again, because even in the books, it's like, man, Logain's a guy I really want to learn more about. And like that's why the last book, one of the things I actually liked about it is to start off, it's like, we're with Logain. Like, this is awesome. Like,
right.
and then you don't really see him. Like, he's just kind of there. But now it's like, okay, I feel like we're finally starting to get like some cool Logain stuff.
Right, exactly. But yeah, the other thing too, and always pay attention to writers do this, is I love when this kind of stuff happens, is the proximity of other events related to other events inside the same chapter. You know what I mean? When you put something like
Right.
Logain talking to Altarans and nobles and the Red Aja next to everything else that's happening in this chapter. So I don't want to like give anything away by telling you
Right.
exactly what it is we should be focusing on in relation to Logain. But there's a lot of things that are happening here that like Nynaeve's talking about sensing a storm, right? They talk about there's somebody showing up from the White Tower. And there's talk of Elida. There's talk of Nynaeve's block and Nynaeve trying to study stilling. She wants to study Suwan
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. So it's just something to kind of pay attention to, because yeah, there's so many of these things are tied together, and a lot happens here for these characters to develop. And it's crazy because at this point of the story, I feel like it is. I mean, we talked at the beginning of the episode. It's almost a good time to maybe like, yeah, keep our 3-hour chunks, because there are so many more characters and there's so many like the story does not like start to narrow in on Rand and others. Not at all, my friend. Literally, the whole Salidar camp is a huge deal. They have sent their individuals. Let me get this right. They sent their group to Camelin, right? Elaine is reflecting on that. The White Tower sent their unit, their emissaries to Kyrian. This whole book is about these two groups going or whatever, and they are led by like a whole different batch of Aes Sedai that you have to know and follow and understand and look for dark in among. That's what makes it really fascinating, but also overwhelming. I got to the point where I went my first read. I was like, I don't even care who these people are anymore. I just want to know. You got to keep tracking your people in among. And actually, that's what Robert. Actually, that's a tactic. I've read some other articles, like when I was first going through the series. He throws so many characters at you, so that way you're looking every possible different direction. So you miss those dark friends. You miss those people who are going to stab you in the back. And it's actually a brilliant kind of way to almost overwhelm you a little bit, and then you didn't see something coming. But then sometimes you have to go back on the reread and say, God, you can see that a mile away. But also, it's tough. It's also one of those things that's still like there's so much going on. It's a lot to keep track of. So yeah, this chapter is called "The Storm Gathers," and Nynaeve, another thing she's doing is she's sensing the change, that a storm is coming, but it looks clear. Like, what is
Yeah.
it? What's the thing that she's sensing? Is it really a storm? Is it really a dark energy? What is it that she and Egwene back in Two Rivers are always feeling. They feel like they can listen to the wind, and they can kind of hear, that's right, that every chapter, every book opens up with the wind blowing and coming in
Right.
from a certain region and stuff. And Robert Jordan kind of keeps that whole thing going. So this is a cool chapter for, and so it was one of the three. I think this was the shorter one, I think, or maybe this was still an hour. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's really confined to them wanting to study the stilling, Logain telling his story, and then just all the busyness, I guess, of Salidar. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So great chapter. And yeah, again, for me, the big takeaway was, man, Logain and talking about the Red Aja set him up. It's gonna be it's gonna be very interesting to see where that goes forward, just because he's becoming a big player, and
Right.
I mean, obviously he can't channel anymore, but hey, you never know, right? So
Yeah, you never know. And one final thing,
he could still lead an army.
he could still absolutely. I love Logain, and I love what they did in the show. I remember when the show started. Anytime now that when I started the when I started the reread with you, we call Rand the Lord Dragon, and we make sure we give him his title, right? But at the time when you start this series, it's Logain the Lord Dragon. All right, he is people call him a false dragon. At the time, I don't know anybody else who's challenging and saying, "Hey, I'm the dragon." So you don't have two contenders right there at the time. Once you get later in the series, you might make a case otherwise. But yeah, it's like I like to call him Lord Dragon. I think I probably would have got behind him. Like his speech in season 1, the way they did that was
It's
so
so
good.
good. So good. The
Ah,
actor they have playing him too is almost like exactly how I envisioned
right.
Logain.
I know.
So
Yeah.
very
So
much
good.
a fan of that. Okay. Chapter 9 here. This sort of shifts points of view a little bit. So chapter 9, plans. This is two different things here. Start with Pedro Nile. The chapter opens with Omerna relaying information to Pedro Nile. Omerna speaks of illuminators wishing to relocate to Amadisia, Dragonsworn in Altara and Murandi, on and how Matin Stepanos is ready to join Pedro Nile. Omenera rambles on about some other things, including Randolph Thor, the Aes Sedai, before Nile dismisses him, asking him to send Baller, his secretary, in on his way out. Balware and Nile speak for some time about other rumors that are being spread about, and it seems that Omerna is wrong about almost everything. Pedro Nile then opens a message that Omerna had handed him before leaving. In the message, one of Nile's agents writes about men riding strange beasts and flying creatures. Aes Sedai on leashes in the Haline.
Yeah.
Nile and Balwer continue to speak. Logain and the Red Aja comes up, as well as the split within the tower. Saladar, Aes Sedai. Last, they speak of Morghese and how every day she stays in Amador, she ties herself more tightly to Pedro Nile.
Yeah. So again, yeah, Morghese. Some people believe she's dead. We know, the reader, that she is alive in Amador, which is again always so interesting because they were very in Camelin, they're very pro Aes Sedai. Right, the White Cloaks are very anti Aes Sedai. So the fact that she's there and at Pedro and Nile's mercy is crazy, and it's sort of a big chess game going on between those two. And yeah, the interesting folks in there, Omerna is interesting, and Bulwer, his secretary, right, is just sort of like um, there as well. So these are some of the people sort of around Pedro and Nile starting to kind of grow that a bit or whatever. But yeah, that's an interesting batch there. Let me see what the I really think
Yeah.
that's just, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it just sort of serves as a good sort of, and this is one of the things I've noticed Robert Jordan does is every once in a while, I feel like inside of a chapter, we get somebody else's point of view. So it's like we just had a few chapters in which he's beginning, and I've noticed that at the beginning of books and roughly around this point, like chapter 9 or 10, he sort of like gives you somebody else's perspective, and it's usually something like this where somebody's receiving news, so you can kind of see like how the other factions are sort of viewing some of the events that are going on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. The one of the reasons I was hesitating there because I brought up those two characters, Balwer, and Omerna, and I didn't want to mix them up. I don't know why I had them backwards in my head, but one is the fake spy master, right? And one is the real spy
Real
master.
spy master.
Yeah, and I always forget. I always kind of have to go back and look real quick. Oh yeah, which one's which, right? So the secretary. So yeah, Balwer is the one suggesting those rumors, right? All those bad rumors about Rand being a puppet of the Black Aja and all these different things, 4 different things. It's hard to track who that came from, the whole 9 yards. And then they want Elaine and Gawain. They already have Galad. Galad we learned that he joined up with the White Cloaks. So I mean, Morghese and Pedro and Nile, that kind of comes up in conversation here with them, which I think is what you're coming to next, the next part.
Yeah. So then it switches points of view, right? And it's from Morghese's point of view. Morghese is out hawking. Basil Gill and Petra Connell are with her, and as are her ladies in waiting. In truth, women from Ilron's court and many white cloaks to act as her guard. Some of the ladies are speaking of Galad and how he has become a white cloak. Morghese, who just found out the day before, is still shocked. She's shook. Right? Talk turns to Rand al'Thor and how he displays the lion's throne as a trophy. Finally, Morghese has had enough and announces that she intends to return to the city. As they ride back toward the Fortress of Light, Morghese tries to engage Norwyn, the leader of her escort, in conversation. They speak shortly of the Dragon Reborn and the people who are both joining and fleeing him. Morghese passes a young man and woman huddled together, covered in dirt and dust, with hunger on their faces. She wonders if Rand al'Thor has done this to Andor. If he has, he will pay, she promises herself. I guess my question there is, what exactly are you gonna do? What exactly what exactly would you do if you were still on the throne of Andor and had an army at your back against
she would pay
against the Dragon Reborn and
man,
Aiel army? Like, what exactly would you do? Now you're saying he's gonna pay, you have no army, and he just took over, whatever. Little does she know that he actually is doing it for her. Like,
right. Yeah. It's so funny how my mind slips in that. My mind told me that no, the dragon would make her pay, right? Because I mean, yeah, he is doing this for her, and it's like back-to-back chapters where Elaine is saying, whatever, he better not, what is he doing to my throne? And then Morghese and whatever. Again, Rand
first of all, Elaine doesn't sound like your throne anymore.
Yeah, why don't you guys go do something about it? So I love the best part about this series is when you can kind of sometimes and again,
you're like, this ridiculous. You just like this ridiculous. Like some of these people are just ridiculous.
Yeah, sometimes you can see the arguments of the village council, and sometimes you can see the arguments of the women's circle, and it's hilarious to see the back and forth and just be like, no, you don't know, no, you don't get it, no, you don't get it, and so that is kind of a funny element there. But I wanted to mention something too. I always tell my students you can always learn something, and I'm going to sound so stupid by saying this right now, but I have heard the term hawking. And I've never really known what it meant. I was like, what are they doing? What are they? They're out hawking. What is that? What does that even mean? Right. And I just
with a hawk.
With a hawk, bro. With an absolute hawk. I mean,
now that's HAWK.
Right.
ING.
Exactly.
HOCKING is like hawking a Luke.
Yeah. She's out there. It's a whole spitting contest they're into.
That's hawking.
Oh, sorry. I had to
HAWK. She is quite literally hawking,
with a hawk, which I don't know. I'm
then there's Ardor. Then there's Ardor Hawkwing. Right.
Yeah. As anyone who is out hawking related to old Hawkwing or somehow connected to. And anyway, no, sorry, I just wanted to mention that because I did when you read it, I was sort of like, what the heck? I went and looked. I thought I knew what it was. But I was like, is it really just what I think it is, which is just like hunting with a hawk,
Yeah.
Sorry. There you go,
guys.
That sounds
like it'd be fun.
Yeah, if you got a sick, I mean, actually, it made me think of, and what I thought about was
you gotta wear the glove because their talons will.
Oh, they'll dig right into you. They'll slice you up. Yeah, that's not good. But just real quick, on this chapter, this is one of those plots that it starts to get when there's not a whole, this will pick up a little bit. In this book specifically, you get more White Cloak stuff, especially Patron Nile, and you'll find out why. But like, there's some books go by, and we've said this before, where the White Cloaks, you're like, where are they at? Like, okay, we haven't seen them for a long time, and now more gaze is there, so a big figure, and they're more relevant now, and they will grow in relevance. Right now, Galad is there.
Right.
So at first, when you start the series, you're like, who are the White Cloaks and why do we care? Well, now some of our characters are hanging out with them, and we seem to be coming across them quite a bit, and they're actually a bit pesky. So they're good chapters to kind of keep an eye. And freaking Ordeath is there, right? I mean, doing stuff. So you got to watch out for that guy popping up again. But yeah, all around a shorter chapter. Keep an eye on Pedro Nile and what's going on with he and more gaze and this back and forth, and the spy masters and all these different rumors that are starting, because you'll hear them later, right? You're like the rumors go out, and then we'll pick them up in later chapters, and we're like, all right, we know where that's coming from, right? Or we think we do sometimes.
Well, you're right. So okay, well, that is our 3 chapters for today. So next time we'll be starting with chapter 10, A Saying in the Borderlands, and we're back to Ram.
Nice. Okay. Cool. So I think before we let you guys go, we wanted to do kind of one more thing, right? We just wanted to run through something kind of fun, if that's okay, just to kind of end the show. This will be quick, but
yeah,
we thought we'd talk about 10 Wheel of Time book characters that were missing from season 1. Okay, and it's just a list, and so we're just going to kind of read through these or whatever. As I was reading through, it was just kind of funny, because I guess if you've never read the books, these would be intriguing characters that might make you go like, yeah, wow, that's a kind of a interesting character. Why there's so many? Actually, there's way more than 10, right?
Is this a Screen Rant article or something, or
Collider? Yes, it's a
gotcha.
Yeah, Collider article. So I got a link in the doc there. So first up, so we're going to go through 1 through 10 here. The Green Man, right? Big. I mean, that he's not there. Right. We were speculating all the way up until the end. We were like, is he going to be there guiding guarding the eye of the world, guiding them there, all that kind of stuff, and just nothing about the end of that was anywhere close. And you're going to find that a lot of the characters in this list actually have to do with the very end of Eye of the World. And so kind of interesting. It would have been really cool to see him. You look up images of fan art and stuff. I would have loved to seen what they would have done with someone like this, because he's such a unique character. Like, seeing the Ogier is really cool. We all wanted to see what they were going to do. What's the show? Give us a, costume department. What are they going to do? How are they going to make an Ogier come to life? And I know the Green Man's only there for like this one moment, but it adds if you were watching this and you're like, hold on, there's creatures like that. Even if you never saw it again, you'd be like, what was that? It's one of those, it's like Quaithe for us in Game of Thrones. Like, who is that character, right? And you start to, it provides intrigue, So
the Green Man, also, to be fair to the show, the Green Man might have been something they had planned, but when you have a main member of your cast leave, who knows all the rewriting and everything,
for sure.
that COVID that ended up being. So I would say this, I wouldn't count out the possibility of seeing the Green Man in the future. They could change him.
Yeah.
So number 9 here, Elaine.
Oh yeah, man.
Which we know we're getting in season 2.
Right. Yeah. So that's gonna be cool to see her there. And this was a big sidestep. We went all the way around. We didn't even go to Camelin. Camelin was referenced in the first season, but it's a big stopover. It's the first big point. It's in Andor, and we for our characters, they at least know of it. So all these other places seem super foreign to them. They've never really left the Two Rivers. So that's where they meet Elaine and her brothers and her stepbrother, her mom, and Elida. I mean, they meet like so many people there that kind of will matter throughout the rest of the series. But I get totally why they cut it and why they moved it around.
Fine. I'm fine with it, and I'm glad she's coming in season 2. And I think the casting for Elaine is, honest to God, one of the perfect casting.
Oh yeah,
because a lot of the casting they've done, it's like, that's just not how I envisioned that character. Logain and Rand, to me, were like the best castings. Like, they were like exactly what I imagined. Now, a lot of the casting has been great. Don't get me wrong. Like, Daniel Haney's Lan has actually turned out to be awesome. Just when I envision Lan, I envision like a bodybuilder, like this huge, like, basically I envision like Arnold, and like Conan, right? Like, that's how all the pictures and stuff. So the casting that we got for Elaine is like quite literally exactly how I pictured her. So
right, yep. Yeah. So next up, we got Agonor. I mean, again, this was again the whole battle at the Eye of the World. He's one of the 13 Forsaken, one of the first ones that we see, and we didn't really have that. Moraine kind of has a little back and forth with him, and then he's chasing down Rand. But yeah, they just went and did something totally different, right? Just there was instead of three, we had one.
Right.
So
Of
yeah,
the changes, even though I did hate that episode, I was fine with not having. Actually, to be honest, like, yeah, that's one of the some of the changes they actually made in the episode. I thought I was fine with. It
yeah,
was more like execution than it was actually the narrative changes
yeah.
than anything. But I was fine with
Well,
that.
let me
And
yeah.
this goes into the same one.
Yeah, actually, so Bathamel is also another one of those Forsaken. So these two show up kind of together, and they're meant to be really scary. That's the whole point. Is that like the Murdral, the Trollocs, and then now the Forsaken, and these are like these ugly, scary. Like, what? Who are these people? And it's so different. What was really in contrast to that in the show was that you got Balsamon, air quote, Balsamon, and he didn't look too scary, right? He looked real sane, real normal, real pristine and
Right.
well. You're like, hold on a second, this is a bad guy, and you could tell he was a bad guy too. Like so it had this weird sort of cutting edge, I guess, that wasn't this like we're gonna scare you with nightmares. You already had the Trollocs, you already had the Murdral, so I actually think it was a really very different type of foe to show us at the end, and is intriguing. But yeah, Bathamel is out of there definitely. So
Okay.
yeah, we just got done
This
talking about her, Queen
this ties
Morgase.
into Elaine, and I'm sure I haven't seen the rest of the list, but I'm sure there's two more that tie into all that sort
Right.
of same scene, right?
Yep, for sure. Yeah, so Morgase not being there, big deal. But makes sense because they bypassed Caemlyn, and Morgase is a big deal. I think when you first read the series too, you think, okay, she's this queen. Really, it's going to be her daughter and her kids that have a story, and we're not really going to follow Queen Morgase. But where we're at currently in the series, in our Lord of Chaos reread, Queen Morgase still has this awesome arc going, and it's this wild, thing. So I kind of wonder if actually the show is going to, if we're going to have a Queen Morgase arc, if we're gonna have her take a back seat. You know what I mean? It might be one of those things as we go along. Matt, you can kind of determine like, hey, do we really need that? Is that something that the show might cut, or are they going to make it more of a thing? And
Um
people are probably raging at me right now for even suggesting it, but
No, I'm fine with her actually coming in later because then you get to establish Elaine as a character, and then you get to establish meeting Elaine's mother. Like that's totally a TV thing where it's like we have to go see who my
yeah,
mother. It's
my
like
mother. Yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah,
whoa, then
yeah.
like for the people who
Right,
don't know it, I think it'll be like a cool sort of reveal. I'm
right,
that one I'm fine with. That one actually works fine for television to do it that way.
right. Okay, who we got next there?
Galad.
Galad. Okay,
And
yes.
I'm sure the one after it is Gawain.
Right. So we got Galad. Yep. Again, Elaine's half brother. Again, this is a good batch of characters, right? That people are. These are some of the fandom's most favorite characters, actually. And so season 2 has so many cool things I think to offer fans. If you're a book reader, you're looking forward to these people, and if you've never read the books and you only want to watch the TV show, you've got a really solid batch of characters coming in that I think you're going to love. And Galad is one of those. He's what do we always call him? Yeah, you always say chaotic good, right?
Chaotic good, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely will do, and he drives his sister and brother nuts with that because he wants to follow this code or these morals that really are a bit chaotic, even though they are. It's to do everything right and correct, but at the same time, that can sometimes you got to bend the rules a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
he's not willing to do that. So yeah,
Oh,
okay,
Mordeith. Okay. Okay. They did not
right.
say Gawain, but that doesn't mean they
Um,
still won't. But
Right, yeah, so, okay, next up, we got Mordeith, and again, we went to, Shadar Logoth, and everyone was sort of thinking we were going to get more of that. We really just heard some whistling from Padon Fane, and that's
right.
okay because really what happens with this character is Mordeith kind of attaches to the dagger, the evil there, and then also, Padon Fane, who comes through that, evil city and turns into something more and something different and is twisted in all sorts of ways, so Mordeith is
Yeah,
actually still kinda there through
yeah,
Padan.
they also I think they did do a good job, however, though, of like building up the city to be like don't touch anything. Then it's just like the darkness that sort of attacks them. So this was one I was kind of like, I was kind of okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, they say, like, there's I mean,
Yeah,
I
the problem was they didn't expand put on Fane enough in season 1. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, maybe you could have also done that a little bit with Mordeeth, I guess, or I would have just had it been Padan Fane and just
Yeah, and it might have been
shown.
confusing to show him and then not really see. I mean, all you had to do was have him seize on to something, and you've had this sort of dagger, but also put on Fane. So it's weird, and he's definitely an evil apart from the Dark One. So that's something that's kind of cool for people to understand. It adds an element too in the when you're reading the series to go, wait a second, Trollocs don't like this place, Murdra don't like it.
Right.
It's just something different from what we're taught to fear. So what is this whole thing? And it's something that people will chase through the whole series, and you have to kind of read and find out. And it's cool, So all right. Next up, Elida, right? So we have Elida next up here.
Right. Yeah, who's
In
one of the who's one of the Red Aja. Seems like I don't know that we're gonna get Elida at all.
At all. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like, basically, I think some people have
I
said,
think
Leand
Leandrin just sort of taken her, which
yeah,
you can't again, it's part of the problem of doing a show is you just can't have every character. And I don't know that we need,
right,
I guess I don't know. Because then Leandrin ends up going Black Aja. So I guess maybe
right.
you do have Elida to where it's like, okay. But I just sort of feel like we've already set up Leandrin to serve as that character.
Yeah, it's weird because by bypassing her, like, we see her early on, we see her skills with foretelling and all that kinda stuff, and we find her to be intriguing, but then we don't really hear about her for a while because she's in Camelin, and it's not until later where she comes in to be a big player with,
Yeah.
once Lord Gabriel comes in, and then she bounces over to the White Tower and is back in their affairs. Yeah, right now,
Yeah.
Leandrins
She
are
could
yeah,
she still could. Elida could still show up, and maybe the way you do it is now you need to now it's like, okay, Leandrin's going to start growing some dissent in the tower, and then Elida shows up, and maybe you make her like the leader of the Reds, right? And
mhm,
then she sort of puts Leandrin in her place, and then the fracture happens, and then it's revealed, oh, Leandrin's actually Black Aja. So that's
right.
the way you end up doing that.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So moving on here, Masima. Masima is next up, who is one of the Shannara soldiers that appears with Lord Agomar in Faldara in the book, and he will go on to kind of be with Rand, and he becomes like the prophet and everything. So it's this whole bit that I
Yeah.
think may come later, right? Like we say, but it
Yeah.
also may not be a thing. But
Yeah, I think
we
I
weren't
think
really
I think
sure
he's
who we
another.
saw at Faldera, really.
Right, because they weren't necessarily named. So it's possible we did or whatever, but I think it's okay not to have him.
Yeah. For now. Yep. Mhm.
Now Elias, I think, was cast in season 2, right?
Right, so it's interesting. It's like, I guess I understand now that Perrin is just dealing with on his own some of these powers. In the book, it's very he almost doesn't know about his powers until Elias says, "You have powers."
Right.
You know what I mean? So I guess, like, now he's struggling with this thing. So if Elias then comes in, I think to the watcher that might make more sense to them. They're like, okay, he's struggling. He needs somebody to help him out. I can imagine one
Right.
of the I imagine I watch a lot of people do commentary on shows and stuff, and I can see somebody who's just never read anything. They're looking at this guy going, my guy who I like here, Perrin, is struggling big time. Can we please send him help? He needs counseling, he needs a mentor, and then boom, you're bringing in Elias. So I think that's cool. At first I was a little upset because he's not really in the series a whole lot. Um,
Right.
but Perrin does need he's so different that he does need someone to tell him what's up and what's going on. You need that guy to come in and explain stuff, and then be a character that, hey, then he doesn't need to really come back. He can have a really strong, important role in season 2. They can also expand upon it. If they like it, they can do something different. This is their own adaptation. So
Right.
they've done that. But yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, just a kind of a
That's
cool,
it.
yeah,
That's
just
it.
tough. Just 10 characters. Again, there were other ones that we said. Matt was alluding to that they just chose Galad over
Yeah.
Goblin, but I
Yeah,
mean,
but I think but hopefully we see them both next season. I feel like you kind of
absolutely.
have to, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get that moment with Matt and the whole swordsman versus the quarterstaff and that whole fight scene. It's gonna be great, and I think it's good to get it introduced to that family. That's a neat element to have, like a royal family element in a show.
Right.
And it's like, oh, it's my brother, it's my stepbrother, and my mom was also married to this person, and how are we all related and all that kind of stuff. So that will be interesting for fans, and they can really play that up quite a bit. So, but yeah, just kind of cool to think about 10 characters that were missing, book characters that were missing from season 1. And
there's more.
Yeah, there's more.
Hey,
Leave comment with some of your
we
favorites.
didn't see our riverboat captain, so you gotta.
Oh my good God! Yeah,
so
you're right.
Gotta get it going. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, hey, as always, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. Ez and I are going to go record an extended edition, so you can check that out over on patreon.com or on Apple Premium. And next time we're going to be doing chapters 10 through 12.
Yep, absolutely, guys. If you like our podcast, it actually helps us a lot if you go over and subscribe to the podcast or write us that review, leave us a comment, or send us a message at thehornofvalir@gmail.com.
As always, so we want to thank you guys for answering the call. We will see you soon, and remember that the grave is no bar to our call.